when we're thinking about data concepts and data roles, the easiest way to go through this and to get an understanding of it is to think about what a data project looks like in practice and what the different phases of the project might be. So you start with some sort of data collection effort, and actually that can involve all sorts of people from all sorts of different walks of life, depending on the type of data being collected and the type of information we want to get from it. So you might have survey data or census data that social scientists and statisticians would be involved in formatting, and citizens would be involved in having that conversation, being part of that data collection effort. It might be an Internet of Things sensor type data where we're measuring something, footfall counters or something along those lines. Perhaps we've got image data or film data, or could be satellite images or experimental results from scientists. There are all sorts of things that can end up being data and need to be processed as data. To make it into a data project, we want both to have the data that we have and also an idea for what we want to find out from that data. So we want to know something, we want a piece of insight, we want a bit of modelling, there's something we want to know about it. And when we want to take the data that we've gathered and create that insight, create that piece of information, then that's where the data analyst or data scientist will get involved. And these people are people who know how to go from a column of numbers or a set of images or a vast quantity of database information and to pull out what's relevant and important and to process it in a way that's numerically literate. It makes sense and produce something that connects to people, that matters to people, whether that's a prediction of some sort or a graph or a number. Whatever it is that we needed to know from all of that data collection, the data analyst, the data scientist would be the people to produce that. You also have the other professionals that are key to this process and quite often unacknowledged in there, and those would be the IT professionals and the data engineers. And they're the people who know how to build the systems, in this case of the IT professionals, that host the data and make sure that it's all gathered and synchronised and backed up and that it works. And the data engineers are the ones who take the information from sometimes many different IT systems and make it ready for an analyst or a data scientist to work with. Very important parts of the process, often unacknowledged because their work can be invisible in the process. They don't get to produce the insight and connect with people that way. But if you want your data to be processed into something valuable for people in a quick and efficient way, IT professionals and data engineers are very much part of that process. So there's lots of roles and lots of ways of getting involved with data in the world that we live in just now. So we live in a world where data is collected all the time, and everybody that has ever interacted with a computer or a mobile phone has been part of that process. Understanding what is being collected, what sorts of things that's revealing about you and your interests, and how it might be processed and what might go forward is actually a very important part of all of this. And it can really help you just navigating in the day-to-day world, just really understanding why some things are important, why some things can be risky or dangerous, and what you're putting out there. And of course, because data is so ubiquitous, it's also something that organisations have a lot of. And people with the skills to process that and to make it understandable and communicate it with people can be in very high demand in pretty much any organisation in any sector, from sports through healthcare, through satellite images and mapping. All of these spaces have a high demand for people with data skills, so it can be a really valuable thing both in your day-to-day life and in your employability prospects. There's all sorts of ways that an understanding of data concepts can be really valuable. If you're in the world of work, for instance, somebody else might be presenting data to you. If you've got some of these skills, you can understand what it is that they've done and perhaps even get a deeper understanding for what it is that they're trying to tell you and why. And that can help you form your own judgment and help you make decisions in your working life. And that's just at the very basic level of I understand what you're telling me. If you take it to the next level, then you can be the one that's creating that value. You can be the one that's processing that information. And that can be really good as well. That can be a really good skill to have. It's fascinating. It's a fascinating process to take raw data that people haven't looked at and start to understand the story that it's telling and start to understand the truth that's really under there. And being able to go through raw data that had no real value to people in it and to present maybe your boss or somebody that in command, somebody who's in a decision-making authority with something really interesting that they didn't know about their data, that can really be a strong position to be in. It can be a really good way to make connections and to be valued in the world of work. So understanding your basic data concepts, those numeracies, a little bit about some of the tools you can use like Excel to process data can really give you a real way to be useful in just about any role or environment and can really help your judgment and your understanding of what's going on round about you. So the basics of data concepts is actually something that's really, there's a lot out there that can help you get started about it. There's people blogging about it. It's something that's covered in news agencies and journalism and things every so often. And of course, it's covered in school courses now, and all higher education, further education colleges will all have basic skill sets and these basic skills that will help you understand how data is used. If you want to take it into the next level and start making data into your career, then you can start with online courses. There's a lot of those out there. Or you can move into undergraduate or postgraduate education where you can go into a lot of depth, perhaps in broad, this is what data is, but perhaps in something specialised. Maybe you like geographical data, or maybe you like data in healthcare. And there are courses that are specific to these particular applications and contexts that people can take part in. The hardest thing about it is if you're self-taught, sometimes the spaces where you're not as strong, it's harder to develop. So maybe you're really strong computationally, maybe you're great with computers, but if you don't have your mathematics or your statistics background, you might find some aspects of data processing more difficult. And in those senses, it can be really valuable to have a mentor or a teacher that can take you through those spaces and make sure you don't end up with gaps in your knowledge. So that can be really valuable.